Welcome to OLevels Economics Unit 32 Living Standards. Living standards refer to the level of well-being and quality of life experienced by people in a country. Economists use a variety of indicators to measure living standards. These include the number of households owning consumer goods such as cars, laptops, mobile phones, and televisions. Other indicators include the number of patients per doctor, enrollment in tertiary education, adult literacy rates, the average food intake per person, and whether free elections are held in a country. However, one of the most widely used measures of living standards is real GDP per head. Economists also use composite indicators such as the Human Development Index, or HDI, and the Genuine Progress Indicator, known as GPI, which combines several factors to give a broader view of well-being. Real GDP per head measures the average output produced per person in a country. If real GDP per head increases, it usually suggests that living standards have improved. However, this measure has several limitations. First, it is an average and does not show how income is distributed. A rise in average income may mainly benefit a small group of people, while others receive little or no increase. Second, higher output does not always improve living standards. For example, an increase in the production of harmful goods such as tobacco may negatively affect health. Similarly, an increase in police services due to rising crime does not necessarily make people better off. Real GDP per head may also underestimate living standards if it ignores undeclared economic activities or non-marketed production, such as unpaid household work. On the other hand, it may overestimate living standards if the quality of goods and services is declining. In addition, factors such as longer working hours, poor working conditions, and increased pollution can reduce well-being even if output rises. When comparing living standards between countries, economists again often use real GDP per head because it adjusts for differences in population size and inflation. However, it still has limitations. Countries may differ in income distribution, the size of their informal economy, working conditions, environmental quality, and the types of goods and services produced. Another difficulty arises because countries measure GDP in their own currencies. To compare them, values must be converted into a common currency. If market exchange rates are used, the comparison may be distorted because currency values fluctuate frequently. For this reason, economists often use purchasing power parity, or PPP, exchange rates. PPP compares the amount of currency needed in different countries to buy the same basket of goods and services, providing a more accurate comparison of living standards. A broader measure of living standards is the Human Development Index. The HDI was developed by economists led by Dr. Mahbub ul Haq while working for the United Nations Development Programme and has been published annually since 1990. The HDI combines three main indicators: income per head, life expectancy at birth, and education levels. Education is measured using mean years of schooling and expected years of schooling. Based on their HDI scores, countries are classified into very high, medium, or low human development categories. The HDI shows that economic growth does not always translate directly into human development. Some countries may have relatively high GDP per head, but lower HDI rankings, while others may perform better in terms of health and education, despite having lower income levels. However, the HDI has also been criticised because it does not include factors such as political freedom, environmental conditions, or inequalities between men and women or between rural and urban populations. Another composite measure is the Genuine Progress Indicator. Developed in 1995, the GPI begins with GDP, but then adjusts it to reflect the distribution of income. Since poorer people benefit more from increases in income than richer individuals, the GPI increases when income becomes more evenly distributed and decreases when inequality grows. The GPI also subtracts factors that reduce living standards, such as the cost of crime, traffic accidents, carbon emissions, depletion of natural resources, and the loss of forests and wetlands. At the same time, it adds factors that improve well-being, including the value of housework, volunteer work, and increased leisure time. There are also several other measures used to assess living standards. The United Nations Development Programme produces the Gender Inequality Index, which measures gender-based disadvantages in areas such as reproductive health, empowerment, and participation in the labour market. Health is assessed through maternal mortality rates and adolescent fertility rates. Empowerment is measured by the proportion of parliamentary seats held by women and the percentage of men and women with at least secondary education. Labour market participation compares the proportion of men and women who are economically active. Economists also calculate the Happy Life Expectancy Index, which estimates how long and happily people live by combining life expectancy with a happiness measure. Bhutan uses another unique measure called Gross National Happiness, which evaluates well-being through surveys covering areas such as psychological well-being, health, education, cultural diversity, environmental sustainability, governance, community vitality, time use, and living standards. Living standards are also closely linked to income distribution. In every country, income is distributed unevenly among households, although the degree of inequality varies. Wealth is even more unevenly distributed than income. Wealth refers to the stock of assets with financial value, such as property, shares, or government bonds. Some assets generate income, allowing wealthy individuals to earn additional income from their investments. Economists measure income and wealth inequality by examining the percentage of total income or wealth held by different groups of the population. Two commonly used groupings are deciles, which divide the population into tenths, and quintiles, which divide it into fifths. There are many reasons why living standards and income distribution differ between countries and within regions of the same country. These include differences in income levels, wealth, education, healthcare systems, environmental conditions, and working hours. Income inequality can arise from unequal ownership of wealth, differences in household composition, and differences in people's ability and opportunity to earn income. Households with more workers tend to have higher incomes than those with fewer earners and more dependents. Wages are also influenced by skills, qualifications, and the number of hours worked. Highly skilled and well qualified workers are usually in greater demand and therefore receive higher wages. Full time workers typically earn more than part time workers. Some individuals depend mainly on state benefits or assistance from relatives, which often results in lower incomes. Wealth inequality also results from differences in inheritance, savings, and entrepreneurial ability. Inheritance plays a major role in determining wealth, as individuals who inherit valuable assets may already start with significant financial advantages. People who are able to save more can accumulate wealth over time, meaning that wealth can create more wealth. In addition, individuals with strong entrepreneurial skills may build successful businesses and accumulate substantial wealth. These factors together explain why living standards and income distribution vary widely across and within countries. Thanks for watching.